afternoon, Reverend Daniels.
Good
Welcome, welcome,
afternoon. Good
welcome.
afternoon. Thank you for
Woo!
having me.
Absolutely. I'm so looking forward to today that we get to have a conversation. But I'm going to start out by just saying to everyone that this is Dr. Alice Farrow. You're here again for Around the World and Back with Dr. Alice Farrow. And our guest today is Reverend Talonie Daniels. And you're in for a treat. So let me just start off first by giving you just a picture for a moment. In the process of preparing for this interview, I had two of my daughters look up some information. So one daughter I asked to look up Phenomenal Woman, and the other one to look up Reverend Daniel's YouTube videos for me to hear some of her pieces. And my 13-year-old daughter said, Mom, who are you interviewing? And so I asked her, why did she ask that? She said, well, I'm looking at this poem and it's empowering. And then I'm listening to what you're saying. And, I don't want to say an activist, but I'm trying to get the word. So, Reverend Daniels, I created such a picture about you in this home as we were preparing. And I want you to know that I believe that you are a phenomenal woman. And I want to celebrate you. That's where I want to start today. I want to celebrate you in all of your different venues and the things that you do. And so I'm just letting folks know, and then you can introduce yourself. So this person before you, when I looked at all of her documents, I saw entrepreneurship, being the founder of an early child care and education center for years. I saw a piece on this business finance industry. Loved it. I saw a piece on theater, art, music, a percussionist, the director of music and art. I saw an individual who loves young people, youth engagement, part of her own process. And I'm just sharing just bits and pieces. And then I learned that she was a foster parent for 10 years, a licensed foster parent for the state of Connecticut. Brings in child welfare, brings in all the elements that goes along with working with children who unfortunately may have ended in a foster situation, having to go into foster care and being exposed to all of the dynamics. And so just thinking about you in that regard, but then also I got to look at half a stage company and that she actually participated and was part of plays. And then I thought about when I was in my undergraduate, I had to go to the Hartford Stage Company to observe a play and then write about it in my music appreciation class. And so all I'm doing right now is letting you know that the person that's before you is diverse in terms of experience, exposure, education, and she's willing to share a few minutes with us today. So thank you so much, and we celebrate you as you are. So do introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Dr. Farrell. Thank you for having me. This is an awesome opportunity that I could not turn down, and then it was you. So of course I couldn't turn you down. But I am Talonie Daniels. I'm an ordained minister. I am the music director and director of worship and arts at the First Cathedral in Bloomfield, Connecticut. I also work full-time in the finance and retirement industry at Prudential Financial. And I am a wife and a mother and a grandmother. I love God. I love people. But my favorite group of people are young people.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So, I'm just going to jump right in. Everyone, I want you to experience, and I don't know if you're going to be able to, but I'm going to do my best. For you to know what I experience when I go into conferences where Reverend Daniels is going to be that worship leader. And I want you to imagine women from diverse backgrounds, coming from different regions, different states, coming to Minister Siret's Green annual conference and women coming in with their successes, but coming in also with their challenges, their pain, their suffering, their difficulties, their anxieties, um, their family of origin traumas, as well as their existing challenging relationships. So this is the atmosphere that we're in sometimes in those annual events. And Reverend Daniels comes in, and she is expected to lead and to do a work in that space where we're preparing and the presence of God is experienced and worship flows from our bowels as she ministered unto God and ministers outward to us. And I just want you to imagine that. But now I'm going to ask Reverend Daniels, tell us, Reverend, about your preparation and about coming into a sphere where you know there's a lot of pain and suffering. And how does music and worship help in that, dealing with pain and suffering? And the reason I'm asking you this is because right now, with COVID, the intersection of COVID-19, civil unrest, the shadow pandemic of increased domestic violence in homes across the world, and the opiate epidemic, we're seeing an increase in the suffering. So please speak a little bit in any which way you want to take it.
The conference that you're speaking of is the Encountering God's Presence conference that our dear friend Elder Cyrette Green hosts each year. And what I love about her and how God prepares her for these events is she is prayed for a whole year before she pulls her team together. They get their theme, they plan it all out. And when she reaches out to me, she asks everyone who's going to be involved to fast. And there are themes and scriptures, and we go into the season of fasting to prepare for that conference. And I think that is very important when you're, I mean, when you described it, it sounds challenging, but it's beautiful because you've got PhDs, master degrees, you got blue collar, hourly workers, union workers, women, homemakers, retirees, college graduates, all coming together with so many issues, but with one purpose: to draw closer to God and to be filled, to be replenished. And so it, to me, is as important as a surgeon going in for surgery. You don't want your surgeon golfing minutes before he comes in to cut you open. You don't want your surgeon, having a drink with his buddies at the bar and coming in to do surgery on your mother or your grandmother. It is that important, what we do. It is life changing. And if you're going to get into the presence of God and ask God to do surgery on the folks that are there, you need to take that assignment very seriously.
Thank you so much for sharing that. When we are thinking about the faith community, and I'm going to share this with you, that over the last almost 30 years that I've been in the field, human service, being a licensed clinical social worker, and being part of many meetings, often I hear questions like, where's the church? Is the church not going to be at the table? Where is the church in this situation? And I often go back to the point of letting folk know that the church and the faith community is actually present and doing the work of the work, which is what I call it, on the ground work, prevention, intervention, and post counseling and treatment work in actuality. And that safety net has always been in existence. And so, what I'd like for you to speak to now, just taking us a little bit now into the director of youth ministry. We often hear that it's difficult to engage young people, but at the same time, in the literature, it tells us that when young people are connected to organized faith institutions, that they're less likely to engage in substance use treatment or other at-risk behaviors. And so tell us a little bit about your experience as the director of youth ministry and the work that you do with young people. How do you engage them?
So I was a director of the youth ministry over 20 years ago. So it was totally different back then. Those young people are now adults, married with children. And it's great to see them and to connect with them on social media and to know that, alongside some other adults that worked with us, that we poured into them and invested in them at that time. And they're still in the faith. They're still in ministry. They've launched businesses and they're doing phenomenal things, and they will always be my kids. So it was different back then. It was even different for me growing up. We didn't have a choice. We weren't asked. No one came and said, "Do you want to do this?" It was, "This is what we're doing," and my mother and my grandmother made sure that I was there. I think the challenge that we have now, particularly with 2020 and going forward, is this whole pandemic and what the isolation did to us, and what virtual learning and virtual church is having us, adjust our ways, so to speak. Due to my activities on my job at Prudential, I was able to host a couple of job shadow programs where they brought in some students from a local high school. And as a result of my engagement over the past years, they reached out to me last year and said, "Would you like to be a part of our planning committee for our virtual career programming?" Because they recognize that with schools being virtual or hybrid learning, they had to do their programming a lot differently, because it wasn't an option to say we can't do it. It was necessary and it's important to do. And of course, I said yes automatically. Um, as a result of being a part of the planning committee, I was then asked to participate in a high school internship program. So it's several weeks of training, activities that they need to do, talks and lectures, but they will then be able to interview for paid virtual internships with these companies. So it's an awesome opportunity. And so I've been in a couple of sessions already with them. Great group of young people right from the city of Hartford, where I was born and grew up. And so I'm familiar with the surroundings that they live in. And it was important to the program director to say, "Hey guys, you see me, I'm cool and everything, but I'm as white paper. And these kids really need to see people of color when we're having these conversations. I don't want it just to be a lecture from me to them." And so he's gotten a group of great people to come together, men, women, um, some allies, but then some people of color to come in and to pour into these young people. And then it's been great. It's been phenomenal, but we need to continue that. Now that we are here, these young people have an opportunity to grow in this virtual environment where we adults got dumped into it in 2020. They were already using social media. They were already using these Snapchats and these videos and emojis and things, and we're playing catch up. But now they get to create what the world will look like with this virtual platform in place. They know how to evolve it. They know how to build on it. It is so important that we get on board with them
Yeah.
and learn what they know. But then we get to teach them those interpersonal, those soft skills, those things that we can transfer from virtual world to being in the office and vice versa. Being out in ministry and being in the boardroom, those things that are transferable skills, because that's lacking when you have a virtual world, because you don't get the engagement, the physical engagement that you sometimes need. So it's important to pour into them and to do that. I think that is the challenge that any youth ministry is going to have right now, is to continue to strengthen the skills in their young people while using these virtual platforms, social media, and other things to not only keep them engaged, but keep them growing. Because we don't want to just have parties, we want to develop them and make them better and stronger.
Wow, 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 wow. I love it. I love the connection, the intergenerational piece. And I heard, I believe, at least 3 times you said, pour into them. That is so significant. That's active participation. That's
Absolutely.
active listening. That's being present with them. That's
Absolutely.
involving them. That's engaging them. That's embracing them where they are. That's thinking beyond their present space and making pathway for them. That's all of that that I'm feeling. And that is the piece that I just want to tap for just a moment. You
Mm.
also just brought that piece in that says not just to engage, but you want them to grow and develop. And that is so essential. And so I'm just going to pause for a moment there, since so often I hear from the provider world, whether behavioral health or support systems, or juvenile justice or child welfare, that piece of not being able to engage and or not being able to sustain the engagement. And so
Mhm.
just thinking about what you, just that phrase, pouring into them, that imagery is what I'd like to just leave on the platform just for a moment. So now, go ahead, Rev.
That when you're pouring into someone, you have to have the capacity to do it.
Mm,
You can't be forced.
mm,
It just, when you're pouring something out, it comes out easily. It's liquid, it's fluid, it just comes right out. If I gotta pull something in there to pull it out, it didn't pour.
mm,
And I think that being a youth leader by default may serve a purpose, but it it's not going to be as effective as you want it to be. You need to be called to this. You need to have the capacity to do it. You need to be continually learning and growing yourself, hearing what they're hearing, seeing what they're seeing, eavesdropping on their conversations, either spiritually or naturally,
mm.
just to find out what the conversations are, to be able to speak to that, to a group of people, and to reach at least one person.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much for saying that, because sometimes the young people will tell you, and they'll tell you straight up, you're fake. They will tell you straight up, you're fake. They need authenticity. They need
Absolutely.
genuineness. They need folk who are going to meet them where they are and speak truth and not be fake. And that is something that young people have shared. They don't want any, if you really don't want to be with me or help me or support me, get out of my way.
Mhm.
And so, what you're speaking to is absolutely true. I've heard it and I know it to be true. The other piece that I've heard is where some of our young people will actually say, I don't know that I'm going to live beyond 16. And
Mhm.
some others would say, I don't know that I'm going to live beyond 20. My cousin is dead. My uncle died. This one was shot. My neighbor, my somebody else is in prison. And that's their reality.
Mhm.
And so that authenticity is so crucial. And when they find someone that is willing to pour into them, at times there's a barrier. They're not able to lower that barrier enough to let you come in. And that's because of it's a protective position that they take, right? So it takes some time and some work, some engagement, going beyond, above and beyond sometimes in order to make that connection. And is there anything that you can speak to that? Because I think some of our providers and some of our youth leaders actually, they take it personal and they just shock when a young person don't just let them in immediately.
Well, you got to understand too that they're young, but they've experienced some things. And if you don't know what their first negative experience was, it could be three or four, but they remember it. You as a person, you could trigger it. Your look could trigger it. The way you talk can trigger them. The words that you use can trigger them, and so they're going to stay at bay. Trust is more than just me believing in the words that come out of your mouth. I have to believe that you are competent. I have to believe that you're an advocate for me. And if you haven't proven yourself to be competent and an advocate for me, then the wall stays up.
Mm,
It's not
yes,
going to go anywhere.
yes. Thank you so much, so much. And the reason that I zero in is because I know folk will be listening. And taking some of the strategies and the tips to help them in their work. So thank you so much for sharing those pieces. Now, what I'd like to do is just move a little bit into the music and the theater piece of you. Just, I don't even have a question for you. I just want to bask in what you want to tell us about art and music. And let me just look at my paper for a moment. I'm seeing all of these different things. It says music coordinator for the First Cathedral Productions, Believe, Risen King, The Big Event, Family Ties, and Birth of the King. And on August 2nd, 2019, you hosted United to Worship.
Yes.
Recorded your first live album. So
Yes.
talk about music, art, and your album, all of it.
I think I loved music before I could talk. And that's the way I can put it. My grandmother sang, my mother is a singer. My father's side of the family, there's a lot of musicians and singers on that side. So I just, I sing songs now and my husband says, how do you even know that song? It came out before you were born or when you were a baby. I just remember it. It was just always present. So I didn't really have a choice when it came to music. Music found me. I didn't say, oh, I think I like music. It's just eating, breathing, drinking, sleeping, music. That was just a part of my life. And I think my mother and my grandmother, they love music so much, but my mother would play just all kinds of music and we loved musicals. So we would go see them whenever we could at the Bushnell and here and there. And I just fell in love with it. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do performing theater. I didn't want to be in a movie. I didn't want to be on a TV show. Just give me theater with live band and acting and dancing, curtain up, curtain down. That's what I wanted to do. That's what I was drawn to. So I was able to participate in the Hartford stage, 84, 85. And it was a summer program for youth and you had to do auditions and it was a day of auditioning from singing to acting to dancing. And then they said, okay, thank you for coming. And so I left and I was like, well, gee, I didn't feel real good when they said bye. It was just so, and then sure enough, I was selected for the program. So it was so much fun. It was great until one performance where I got pushed during our finale number, landed on my ankle, but the show must go on. So with the sore sprained ankle, I performed the rest of the week. I loved every single minute of that. So that never really got away from me. I applied to UConn to go to college as a theater student and got accepted, went to orientation, and I came out of orientation saying, well, maybe I don't love it that much. I'm not willing to, because some of the students were like, oh, I sleep in my car and I traveled here and I worked 3 jobs in the summer so I could do that. And I'm like, I don't think I'm willing to starve to do this. I don't want to be hungry and homeless. No, I think I want to do something else and that'll be something on the side. So I didn't do that. I did not go to school at that time. Became a mother, a single mom at a very young age. And so my life took a turn. Now I've got to be a provider. So I did that. But the love of the arts has never left me. Now as the music director at First Cathedral, which a position which I kind of came into by default, but have established myself in that role since 2018. And Birth of the King, which was our Christmas production in 2018, was the first production where we had all original music too. So it is our pride and joy. And you can find it by just typing Birth of the King. You can go to my ministry page on Facebook. I shared a link in December when we aired it for Christmas. Phenomenal play written and directed by our executive pastor, Leroy Bailey III. And it was great. It was a great opportunity. It was a lot of work just coordinating all of the pieces, the original music to the dancing and working with the actors who had to sing as well. But I loved it. The craziness that comes with all of that is phenomenal, but I love every minute of it. And so it's, right now my son is a freshman at the Performing Arts School in Hartford, one of them. And so it's in him as well. So people will probably notice his face and hear his voice. Well, his voice has changed because he's 15 now. So he sounds more like Barry White, but but he's an actor, he's a singer, he's a dancer, he's got it honest. And my husband as well is in the theater arts, actor and the writer. Yeah, so it's just in us. It's there, and I love it. And I miss being able to put on those types of performances, but I know that God has a greater plan for us, and He will release us to get back to that. And we are ready to go. We are ready, set, and as soon as He says go, we are out the gate.
Out the gate. You're out the gate. This is wonderful, wonderful to hear. So I know that at some point, and perhaps you'll allow me at some point to extend the invitation to Mr. Mark Daniels, your lovely husband, since
Absolutely.
he's in this. I would love to have him on, and your children. I know that you have 3 sons. So thank you so much for bringing us into that space. I still want to hear a little bit about the first live album piece, because I saw on Facebook this thing that came up and the screen and the post-it, and like, whoa, congratulations. Just share with us that all the experience around it and just your feeling around it.
So what I will say first is that I have learned how to wait on God. I've never been one to ask for an opportunity. It's just been granted to me. We've been at the First Cathedral since 2005, and I did not ask for anything that I was allowed to do. It was always presented to me. It was always offered to me. I was able to help out ministers of music that came through in any way they needed help, whether it's to lead a song direct, to lead rehearsal, to lead worship in their place. And they were always appreciative. And I've always been grateful and thankful for their support and their opportunities. But people would say, when are you going to do? And when are you going to do? When are you going to do? And my response would be like, just pray for me. Just pray. When it's time, God will reveal the time, and it will be the perfect time. And so we had, a couple of recordings that were done at the church. One where I was able to help the opening performer, just kind of direct some of the singers and some music along the line. And then in 2018, right after Birth of the King, we were able to put on a live recording with about 2.5, 3 weeks notice. And I was the vocal director for that. And it was amazing and quite successful. And again, people are like, well, we're waiting on you. In God's time. Just pray for me. Just pray. That's all my responsibility. Just pray. And then when it came to me and said, you need to do it this year. When are you going to do it? And I'm like, huh? And they're like, yeah, let's do it this summer. I'm like, wait, huh? The summer? Oh, okay. All right. And so then it was, okay, Lord, what do I need to do? And who do I need to do it with? And all God was speaking was worship. I just want to gather people together. I just want them to worship. And I just kept hearing united to worship. United to worship. What does united mean? It just means a whole bunch of diverse people, from different places, different mindsets, coming together and worshiping me. That's all I want. And so I reached out, because people owe me favors now. So I reached out to some amazing songwriters, and I said, you guys know me, I helped you out, you owe me. I need a song. And right off the bat, I got you. You need a song? I got you. And so that's kind of how it happened. I had some friends come through with some songs. I wrote 2 of them myself. And what was amazing about that night was the people were singing. None of these songs had been heard before, ever. None of them ever. And people were singing along. There were no lyrics on the screen. they caught it and they sang.
Ooh.
And so when it was over, we were crying. We were like, that was wild. Like, how did that happen? But that's what God wanted. And I never gave the songwriters a theme. I never told them what God was speaking to me about that night. The songs were right in line with what we needed it to be. And it was amazing. It was overwhelming and it was amazing. It was amazing. And so it's in post-production right now. It's being, with COVID and folks becoming ill and people having to bury loved ones, things just kind of got off track. But, again, it's in God's hands. And when God says it's time, then it's time.
Wow, wow, wow. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you took us back there and showed it to us because someone needed to hear that. Many individuals needed to hear that.
Yeah.
That's so important. God's timing, so important.
God's timing.
Thank you so much. So, what I'd like to do now is because I'm just thinking about all the different facets in terms of your life and experiences. So, I'd like to take a look at the early childcare and education. It's really special to me, that piece of work. I worked extensively with the Office of Early Childhood here in Connecticut. And I know I've also worked with daycare centers, development centers, care and education inside of facilities as well as home base. And there's been so much around what needs to happen in terms of the standards, the preparing the young ones to transition to preschool and kindergarten and so forth. So it's really important what's going on in those early years, right? And so, can you just share from an entrepreneurship place? And I'm saying that because I'm lifting up the fact that so many, when we think about the inequities and economic disparities and the wealth gap and all of those other pieces, there's a need for us to speak about entrepreneurship. We're often not speaking about it, not enough in our communities. And so, if you could speak to some of the work that you had to do to get to that space where you can found your own place and be able to provide. And then the fact that, and I just want everyone to hear me on this piece. When I read the content about the busy hands, the engaged mind, the way you cultivated the atmosphere for learning, that really meant a lot to me. So I'd like for you to share about all of this. Thank you.
So I'll start even with my time as a foster parent because it kind of begins there.
Wonderful.
I became a foster parent as a single mother. And my son was probably around 4 going on 5 at the time that I was going through my training and getting licensed. And so I never wanted to have a child that was older than him because I considered the fact that I wanted him to feel that he was the oldest, that he could help with these children. And so that's what I was licensed for. And it was important for me to provide not only a safe home, safe environment, but one where these kids can thrive. I had a 4-year-old child who could not get into a car. He would climb into the floor of the car and then climb onto the seat. He couldn't walk upstairs without using his hands and his feet at 4. He couldn't stand up straight and walk upstairs. I had a child who was afraid of grass, who could not speak more than 2 words at almost 2 years old, could not speak. So she had terrible tantrums. These are the kinds of kids that needed stability, safety, those first needs things more than anything. But then, above that, they needed therapy, they needed help, they needed physical therapy, they needed all of these types of things, which the state and I provided. And at one point I said, I want to do more. I wanted to start my own business. And
Mm.
so I was living in an apartment. I had a foster child at the time. And I said, you know what? I need to buy a house. I need to buy a house. I need to, start my business. And I don't want to do it in an apartment because then you're limited. And so this single mother with very little, credit went and bought a house.
Mm. Mm.
Um, and so the house that I was looking for had to have what I needed for the daycare, either a fenced in yard or a secured yard or a yard, period, that the kids can play in. Nothing that was on the street, not a busy street. All of those types of things went into the type of house that I wanted to buy. And initially I wasn't even looking to buy. I didn't know what I liked. I knew what I needed because I wanted to open the business, but I didn't even know what kind of house I liked. So I had a friend who was a realtor and I said, can you just take me around? I just want to see what I like. I don't know anything. So I just want to go looking. And we looked, and 3 weeks later, we found the house and made an offer.
Ooh.
So, so it happened very fast. It happened very, very fast. And so I got the house, I get into the house. I'm still, working for a different financial company at the time. And I didn't like something that one of our CEOs said. One of the VPs in a meeting that we were having was presenting himself to say, look at what the great things that I've done. But what he omitted to remember was that we were sitting there and he wasn't being truthful about exactly what he was saying and how it came to be. And I said, why am I doing this? Why am I working for these people that cannot be truthful? Why am I putting my life into their hands? And so I decided to, start the process for the business. So I bought the house, started to take action to start the business. And by the time things really started, getting into the investigation and the background checks, it got a little extensive and they said, oh, you have a foster care license. We can't license you for foster care and for, daycare at the same time. There was a problem. And I said, well, you know what? I'll surrender the foster care license because this is what I really want to do. And I don't want to hold anything up. And so that's what we did. I surrendered my license to do foster care, focus, completely on the business side of things. And I was pregnant with my last son. And when I went on maternity leave, I took some of my very personal things with me, knowing that, things would be wrapping up. And while on maternity leave, they said, your license is here. Here's your certificate. You can now open your business. And I went in with the baby and they were like, oh, look at him. Isn't he nice? And I said, hi, here's my letter of resignation. Sorry. So I resigned and I opened the business. Within a month, I had my first enrolled student, and it was off and running from there. It was great for me. I had another outlet. I was still involved in ministry at the church, with the music ministry and being a minister at the church. And so my days and nights weren't necessarily all in the house. I would spend my days at the house with the kids. And then at night I had rehearsals or I had meetings or I had things I needed to do. So there was that balance for me. And I needed that balance because also I had my youngest son. So I have a newborn in the house at the same time that needs my attention. And I have a husband and an older child. So that balance was very important to me. But some of the kids that came to me, with the situations were so various. I had foster children. I had, children whose parents, were going through difficult times in their marriage. I had a father who had just been reunified with his infant son through the state. And so he needed a lot of guidance because he's now a full-time parent and he had no idea what to do. And so I wasn't just helping out these kids, I was also helping out these parents in a lot of situations as well. And that's important. My first focus was the children because you don't know what children are dealing with at home. And when kids come in and they smile with you, you don't know what they're dealing with when they leave your presence. And so, congratulating them and rewarding them and finding what what drives them. The ones that love the cars, the one that love to paint, the one that love to read, the one that love to sing and dance. You know, we had our silly time in the afternoon where they could do whatever they wanted to do for 1 hour after they woke up from their nap. And I just sat there and played along with them, all of those types of moments, because you don't know what they're facing when they leave. And then when I heard the stories after, it was like, geez, but then you know that you've covered them. And of course, kids come in the door, you're supposed to, spot check them, make sure there's no marks, there's no issues, there's nothing different on them, that they're not sick before they enter in. But I was also praying for them as they came in the door. So I was doing those kinds of scans and asking questions, but praying for them as they came in as well. So that was very important for me to cover these children and to give them, because those early stages are quite important before they turn 5, very critical times in a child's development. And so to have a hand in their growth and development at that time was not only an honor, but a privilege for me. I loved every single minute of it.
Wow. I thank you, Reverend Daniels. I'm thinking about, we just have to celebrate you. And I know that's not your style, and I know that's not the way you move, so to speak, but I'm going to pause to just acknowledge your contribution, your pouring into and covering of young people, infant, just the age that you had in your child care and education center there. And the reason I'm saying that is because of this. A lot of my other pieces of work has to do with adverse childhood experiences and adverse community experiences, and looking at the psychological impact and the physiological impact and the impact on the cognition and the neurodevelopment aspect of a youth when there's some adverse childhood experience occur in their life. And so when I'm thinking about all that you did in order to cultivate and to nurture, because I saw that also in your document, that balancing with the nurturing, the development, that beautiful dance, and that's what I call it, a dance, to make sure the children are experiencing love, tenderness, compassion, empathy, all that they needed to, while at the same time experiencing what they needed to have in place for their academic growth. And so I just want to just acknowledge and celebrate you in that space. Now, at the same time, I want to acknowledge and celebrate you in terms of the entrepreneurship piece. Because right now, and I've been part of a number of seminars and workshops about entrepreneurship, about starting your own business, about working for a company while doing the pieces to develop your own company, and some of the challenges. But what I heard you say is that there was some challenges, but you persisted because this is where you wanted to go. You knew that you wanted to start this. So it did mean you giving up something. And that is a little bit perturbing for me on the policy ends of things, in terms of how policy interact with policies when it comes from different organizations, because you have child welfare in regard to the aspect that has to do with fostering and foster parent. And then you have Office of Early Childhood, who typically is the one who would license childcare. But that's another piece I'll just put aside. I just want to acknowledge that through your determination and the fact that you knew exactly what you wanted, it was to set that business, that particular thing. You continued with it. The last piece I want to comment here, just for those who are reviewing, is this. When it comes to wealth gap, when it comes to economic disparities, we always hear about houses and having your own home and what actually comes with that in terms of generational wealth. Right? We always hear about that. That's critical. And as a single mom, you decided you are going forward. On the other end, we hear about owning your own business and being your own boss and having this entrepreneurship piece going. That's another opportunity. And so I'm just bringing those two together, acknowledging, applauding, recognizing you as Reverend Daniels. And I know, because at this point, you want to say, To God be all the glory. I know.
All of that. I mean, when I say God's hand was in it all, because when it took a while to even get the house, right? We get the house. The person who owned the house didn't live in the house; he rented it. So he's looking to get rid of it, and then HUD came back and said, "Oh, we need you to do this, and this, and this, and this," and he did it. And then the bank that we had decided to go with all of a sudden started doing things that we weren't so comfortable with, and so we were like, "No, we got to shift gears. We got to find a whole nother bank." So we had to find another bank. When we got to the closing, the owner said, "I appreciate you because you endured all of those hiccups and delays and challenges through the end." This is what the seller is saying. He's like, I don't even know how you did it, but congratulations to you for seeing this through. And for a minute, I was okay with just having a house. And it took, words coming out of the mouth of a VP that were, there were some other things too that were being done that just were not appropriate, that weren't true. And I knew they weren't true. And I said, I have the house. What am I doing? The reason why I got the house, let's focus on that. And so that's exactly what I did. It was almost like God said, no, you wanted this to do this, and I gave you the house, and you still not doing what you said you were going to do. And so he made it very clear to me that it was my season and my time to leave. And it worked out. It happened for me. And I would not change any of that time, because it also gave me time to be home with my infant son, and to watch him grow. It was just great and phenomenal. And I sacrificed even with that. You leave this full-time job when you're making all this money to basically start over, in your house where your income at a certain point is limited, right? Because you only do so much as, by myself. And so I looked at, possibly hiring somebody else and all those other avenues, and, that it just didn't work out that way. But it was amazing. I would never take that back. It was great. And it's critical work, because not every bad experience in a person's childhood is because their parents were mean or criminals or on drugs. Some are just not equipped.
That's right.
Some parents need to be trained. Some parents need to be mended and healed from their childhoods.
That's right.
We just go to having kids, and we don't take time to deal with the brokenness that we have before we start having kids. We just think because our bodies are ready, that everything is ready and in line. And that is hardly ever the case. But no one stops us in our tracks to say, are you healed? Are you whole enough to give birth and to raise a child in a healthy way? Because I would say that my childhood was crazy and off the wall. But now as an adult, no, I was born to 2 teenage parents. What did they know as teenagers in high school? What did they know? And so, now you can just take all of that off of these folks and say, well, they're not bad. They're just ill-equipped, or they're broken, or they're sick. You can't expect a sick person to do a good job because they're sick. Their immune system is down. Their body is broken. They need to rest and to heal and to be, and to recover. And so if you've been in this broken place and you're having kids and you never recovered, then you perpetuate that thing. Now you've got kids being raised by, sick, ill-willed, emotional, spiritually sick parents who are now that themselves. And it just it's a cycle. It's a cycle of things. And I think that's why most people, you see it on social media. I know that our company has afforded us every opportunity to get the help that we need, but mental health during this season is important. It doesn't mean that you don't have faith. It doesn't mean that you are not saved and not a Christian. It doesn't mean that you profess too much and then in closet, you're just a broken mess. But no, you need that. You need that. And if you're not seeing a therapist on a regular basis, you at least need to have someone that you can check in with and have a conversation with once a month, once a quarter, something.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
You have to have that. You need to have that.
Thank you so much for putting that on the platform. Others absolutely need to hear this. So good that you did that. when we think about the, and I'm going to touch on that in a moment when I ask you about COVID-19 and the civil unrest and your perspective. But I do want to go back to one piece. When you mentioned the company, you worked for a company, and you are in the business and finance industry. One of the other aspect around retirement, can you just take just a moment to speak to the importance about retirement planning, just for us, so that we can hear that aspect?
It is more important now than ever. If you didn't think so, we found out through the pandemic and what COVID-19 did to most of America. It is more important that we plan for the future. Just think of it as planning for the future, for your future, for the children that you and the grandchildren that will be here when you're no longer here. It is quite important that not for just the retirement, but life insurance. You need to save. You need to have savings, because it's more than just not being able to take that favorite trip that you want to take. It goes a little bit beyond that. The work that we do with the youth, with the mentoring and the job shadow program and the career planning, we have to take a step back. And when I say I work in retirement industry, I've got to explain to them what that is, right? But if I, name some type of brand, they can quickly tell me who owns it and when it started, but they don't really know what that means. When I say I work in the retirement industry, I onboard, employer paid pension plans for their employees. Well, what does that mean?
Mm.
That means when they work for so long that they're invested in this plan, that when they retire, they can get a monthly income from that, sometimes for their lifetime, sometimes for the lifetime of their spouse. You hear people say that they're retiring, they're getting a pension. That's what they're talking about. So we have to really break it down for our young people because their parents don't know.
Yeah.
I started in the retirement industry working with defined benefit plans, which are almost non-existent anymore. Most people have, a defined contribution plan where a portion of their pay is being saved up, and maybe their employer is contributing and matching their contributions. But I started in defined benefit plans. I didn't know anything about a defined benefit plan. I had only heard about a 401k plan. So there's so much out there. There's so many companies that are willing to help. And I know that our company is now looking to educate and pour into Black communities in response to what happened last year. And then there's, banks that are owned by people of color that most folks are now seeking out to support. And that is great because we need to make them succeed. We need to push success their way.
Yes. I am so thankful for you, Rev, because when we think about, and I'm always in every platform, every meeting actually that I go to, now I lift up the issues around disparities. And when we think about economic disparities, this piece and the wealth piece, it was important for me to have you, since this is part of your life, to have you spend just a little bit of the time sharing on this for us. So I really appreciate that. And I know that we all need to really look into this for ourselves and our generation to come. Let me just transition for a moment. We have taken a bit of your time. I wanted to get folks to know a little bit about you. I know we just touched just a little bit about who you are. And now I really want to hear some of your perspectives. So, your perspective on the COVID-19 from 2020 to 2021. What's been going on with COVID-19, the intersection with the civil unrest, race, the racial inequities, the social injustices, all of those pieces, and really speak to that. I've often heard folks say, I can't wait for us to get back. And I question, get back to what? What exactly is that? So I want you to just share with us
I am so with you on that one. What are you getting back to? I think for me, I look at it from a faith perspective. And I think that 2020 happened to get our attention. 2020 happened and it has revealed a whole lot about a whole lot. And if you want to see, you see. And if you want to ignore and stay blind, then it's all right for you to do that too, because no one's forcing you to see what's really happening. And so you can say, well, that doesn't really happen in America. Okay, then you choose to be blind. That's your stand, and I understand that. That was your reveal. So I see you now. But I think that it was quite a revealing time for us. No one could have thought ever the impact that COVID-19 would have on the world. It didn't come for brown people. It didn't come for rich people. It came for every human being. And it knocked out anyone that it could, despite the money, the degrees, your specialties, the good you've done on the earth, the bad you've done on the earth. It did not care. And I think that made us all the same for once. COVID-19 made us all the same. There is so much disparity when it comes to how it impacted us, because of course we all know that Black communities got hit the hardest. Not every Black person thankfully passed away. The impact of that was just phenomenal. And we couldn't prepare for it. And I think there is still work to be done in our communities. And I think that work is actually happening, and I think it just needs to continue. Doctors and nurses and scientists, Black folks, people of color, coming together and speaking to what we should be doing and what it means for us. But even the importance of health. So for me, it's not so much focusing on a vaccination, but am I at my healthiest weight? Am I taking vitamins to naturally, and am I eating the right foods, taking in enough water? All of these things make us better. And I think we need to holistically look at what could be done for all people, but necessarily the Black community, people of color who are being mistreated because they're Black, being mistreated because they've got their insurance through their state, who are being, pushed aside, treated badly, disregarded, given an antacid and told to go home, later to have a heart attack. Those types of stories are coming to me from people that I love, and they're not all Black people. And so it's just the strain of COVID-19, again, revealing people. And so when people tell me things like I'm having surgery, I'm having a procedure done, I quickly pray that they're not being treated by anybody who is sleep deprived, racist, under the influence of drugs and alcohol, because all of those things can happen as a result of the stresses of, you don't know what people do to cope.
That's right.
And you don't want those coping mechanisms to impact your well-being.
That's right.
And I think that's what's happening. Again, just revealing people's motives and how they respond, whether it's a positive impact or a negative impact, but just understanding how people respond to things. Churches were closed. Then churches went to pre-recorded services, and our service in particular went live back in June. And we've been social distancing, and so we can have less than 1,000 people there safely, and folks still, some choose to stay home, some have to stay home. Some people went against their anxiety and said, you know what, I go to the grocery store, I'm going to try it, I'm going to come to church. And admittedly said they had a hard time their first time. And I get that. I've never had anxiety issues. I've never had a panic attack. My first time going to the grocery store last year was in April. And I walked out there like I had been to a gym. I was sweating from head to toe when I got in the car. My heart was panting. I couldn't, just to go into grocery store, just everybody all over the place and people angry and yelling. And, last year, this time, we were in a very bad place, a very bad place. And so I understand those anxieties, but I think now people are they're ready to go back to worship again. The doors never really shut, but there were limits placed, and live stream and virtual services are great and they have a purpose. But I think the people are ready to come together and fellowship again, to worship, to cry, to run around, to see hands lifted, to see people healed. And I'm ready for those moments, but thankful that we've been able to serve in ministry all through the pandemic. I have a great team of people with me, and there are other churches doing the same. Even though their services are limited to attendance, their teams have been ministering and preparing the way for the word to be delivered for those that are in the building and those that are virtual, and it has impacted the world. But what I love to hear from people is that people continue to give throughout the pandemic. So even though people were home watching service, they were still giving their tithes and their offerings. They were still sowing seeds into ministries. They were still helping out their family and loved ones who needed more during that season. I know our ministry in particular, every Saturday we give out 1,300 food boxes, milk, cheese, all kinds of non-perishables every single week. And we're not alone. There are some smaller churches that are doing that and clothing drives. Again, revealing who the real church really was. And so when people say things like, well, where is the church in the marketplace? Well, if you're looking for a large group of people with a banner marching down the street like a parade, you're not going to find that. But if you talk to someone about what motivates them, what keeps them going to work, what keeps them positive, you will hear messages of their faith. That's the church. So I'm the church, even though I am not quoting scriptures. So, people say, you're just so positive. You always get me to think, well, that's just my faith. That's the church. That's the church. So you're a nurse, you're a doctor, you got sick with COVID, but you continue to go back. How are you doing it? Well, God keeps me, and I prayed and God healed me. That's the church. I'm administering medicines and I'm giving you your vaccine, but I'm praying every time I lay my hand on you. That's the church. So if you're looking for a church name and a banner with the pastor name underneath it, as we do things in the marketplace, that you will not find. But trust me when I tell you that the church is in the marketplace. We're in the boardroom. We're in the nurse's office. We're in the schools. We're down the hallways. We're in the supermarkets. Everywhere you look, you'll find the church. You just need to be looking. If you're looking, you'll find it. If you want to say that it doesn't exist, the church doesn't exist, God doesn't exist, the church don't exist because the church doors have closed or are limited, you're wrong. We're out there and we're still doing the work.
Thank you so much for that, Reverend Daniels. Thank you so much. I'm experiencing just your passion and just your truth around this and your solidness and firmness about the realities of the existence of the church in all the different venues of life and all of the different marketplaces. I was thinking as you were sharing about Reverend Robin Anderson, who is a pastor, Amy Zion Blackman on Willis Avenue, but also is connected to her former place that she was worshiping, which is out on Cross Street in Middletown. And over there, they are actually doing the vaccine clinics in the church, in the side right off of the sanctuary. Doctors and nurses come, they're administering, and she's coordinating, and the work is happening there. Others are having the food pantries, the clothing bank, the counseling, the tutorial programs using the technology platform. We're there. The community meetings, we're there. Having so many voter registration conversations and seminar or workshop to make sure the individuals have a space to speak and learn about civic engagement, right? And it's so fascinating when we think, if you even stop and think about doing a what we call asset mapping within the church and to see where we all are. But so thank you so much for sharing that. Now, if you can, just for a brief moment, share maybe one or two, it could be one, lesson learned during this time. And then also, if you can speak to where you think you've had the greatest impact over this last year and a few months. And the reason I'm asking for these is because, as I mentioned to you and all of my interviewees, is that we are documenting history. This, what we're doing, is part of history. It will be part of documentaries, part of literature inside of books, and others will be able to come back and view and hear what was going on in 2020, 2021, listening to the guests that comes on the show. So do go ahead. Any lesson learned, and then any area you think you may have had some impact.
Sure. I would say both professionally and in ministry, it would be preparedness. I found that I was not as prepared as I should have been in 2020. I found that I was not prepared for what God has purposed for me to do in 2020. I had rolled back into school to finish my degree, which I've had to take some time off due to some family issues around COVID and some other things that were happening with us. But I also have challenged my teams to do the same, that this is the year of preparedness. So not just for ministry from week to week, but what has God called and prepared us to do, purpose for us to do, and being prepared for that. I think COVID-19 kind of showed us that we weren't prepared because we were going out and buying things and stocking up and storing up in crazy ways because we weren't prepared. And it has impacted us where now we're trying to undo all of that. And we're trying to identify the places, the breakage, what went well and what didn't, and where was the breakage, and let's fix it and let's be better prepared for the future. I know that there is a purpose for me. We all have one. God made us with it in mind. And my job is to be prepared for that. 3 times this week, I heard the word released. The first time was directly to me, and I heard released to service, which is a term that we use on my job when we are ready. We've gone through all of the steps of the implementation, and we're now ready to release that plan over to the team that will administer the plan for the terms that they're with our company. And so we look at steps as these need to be done before released to service. And God spoke that to me and said, you need to take all of these steps in order to be prepared for your release to service. And then the next day I see a video and somebody's talking about release. And then last night again, and I said, okay, God, so I'm going to prepare myself. I'm going to get ready. I'm going to study your word. I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm going to seek your face. I'm going to do all these things. And that's on a ministry level. But then at the same time, as a professional, I'm doing the same thing. I am taking courses for my career path. I am helping others identify their passions and their gifts and talents and skills and say, well, where do you want to be? And what do you need to do? What steps you need to do? You need to prepare for that. Yeah. Because even though God's called you and said, this is what you'll be, you're not there yet. So what's going to happen between where you are now and what God has said? Because God is not subject to time. So when he talks, it's past, present, and future at the same time. So what are you going to do when God says this? He means it now and future, but you're not, you got to take those steps and you got to be prepared for the release to service. Yeah. And so I think that's what COVID has done. It has made people rethink the companies that they invest in, the companies that they support. It has made people, young people, get, radical about the civil and racial inequities in our areas. It has allowed companies to step back. We've seen a lot of people, doing things and showing their racist tendencies online, and people go to their employers and say, this is who you have working for you. Now, this company now has to take a stand and an action. And I've seen companies do that and say this type of behavior is not, it's not appropriate. And now they're taking action to make sure that their employees are allies. If you're not with them, then you are against them. And they're saying that we can't have that. We can't have that. Everyone needs to be an ally of a person of color. And I've seen that, across the nation, and it's amazing to see. Unfortunate, because it's a result of the things that happened last year, but thankful that it's finally happening, because it was a season of revealing of what was really underneath all of the stuff that we were doing. We were just going through life, and then boom, this happens, and now you see it. You see all of the stuff that was all buried beneath all of that. So I am purposeful about being prepared. I won't say yes to every good opportunity. I can only say yes to the God opportunities in my life, the things that will absolutely serve me purpose in my release to service is what I need to be doing. And everything else, although it's great, although I'm honored and I am privileged by the invitation, I'm gonna have to say no to some stuff. And it has to be that. And so when you think of the young people that you mentioned earlier that say, I don't know if I'm gonna live to be 21. So you're gonna stop living at 16 because you don't know if you're gonna live beyond 21. What that means is you got a lot of living to do if that's all you think you're going to attain is age 21. So get to living, get to learning, do something, make an impact, help someone, pour into your community, do some community work, reach out to an elderly person and contact them, be their best friend. That's work, that's ministry, that's community work, that's charity work, that's all of that. That's purpose work in the meantime. And so preparedness is the lesson that I learned. I wasn't prepared. Now I am taking steps to be prepared for my release to service.
Wow. So many gems that you shared with us there. And I'm thinking, because I want to make sure I get this other piece in, the impact that, or where you think you've had the greatest impact, if you could speak to that one also. And then we're going to be wrapping up with just two pieces, and then that would be it. But please do.
I would hope that my impact to my community, my direct community, has just been my ability to listen, to hear them. Because so many people feel unheard.
Yeah.
And the frustration that you feel when you feel unheard, even if you can't verbalize that that's what it is, some of that is a result of that. That's where temper tantrums come from. And we call it terrible twos and all this other kind of stuff, but they can't communicate and they think they are, but we're not giving them what they need. They don't feel heard, so they fall out in the middle of the floor. And we do that as adults. And I think I know that I am better now than I was 3-4 years ago at listening to people and to hearing what's going on with them, and to validate their worth and their value. Because I think that is important.
Yes.
If it has no value, then why would I put time in it? So even if I don't have value in myself, then I don't see the need to pour into to develop myself and to do those things that I know God's called me to do. And so I want to add value by hearing them. I want to affirm their worth by hearing them, not always fixing the problem. When you are a helper, you just want to help always. And sometimes they don't need an answer. Sometimes they don't need you to fix it.
Yeah.
They don't need a hero. Sometimes they just need to be heard.
That's
So
right.
I pray that that's been my impact, especially over the last year, that I'm hearing people better because I'm now better equipped to listen.
Wow. Thank you so much. Wow. That's all I can say on that one. Wow. I was speaking to a colleague the other day and she said, listening is the one word that she's coming out of this with. Listening, being a better listener. Thank you so much. Let me just ask you, as you were speaking about valuing and affirming, an acronym came to me. It's one that I made up a while back about parents raving about their children and about communities that they live in and so on. And it's recognize, affirm, value, and empower. So as you were saying, the piece about valuation of valuing, it just came to mind. Now, one of the things that hopefully nothing happens in the future, but we know we're living in this world.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, things they come down, may not be a virus, but some other thing. Let's imagine that you have an opportunity to speak to someone in the future where they come up to some kind of crisis. We've been going through the crisis. This is where we are. They're looking back and they're pressing the button and listening to Reverend Daniel's interview. And you share a quote or some statement that can encourage them in a time where they're in crisis. What quote or statement would you say? You can share on that.
I would say to them uh, that they have purpose.
Hmm.
I would say find those things that you are passionate about. Don't lay them aside because you think that they only serve one platform.
Hmm.
What you are passionate about will lead you to your purpose. They intertwine. And when you have your passions, when you are seeking and developing for your purpose, then you find those ways to get yourself prepared to be released for service. If you're not here, then whatever God wanted you to do doesn't get done. The
Hmm.
group of people that were assigned to you go without you and they could die, whether it's physically, spiritually, emotionally. And I don't want to be responsible. You don't want to be responsible for a group of people dying because you did not do what you were created to do. So, passion, purpose, find it, get prepared so that you can be released to serve.
Wow. I know that just as I'm doing, others will be doing, jotting down. So, purpose, passion, prepared, released for purpose to serve people. I saw PPPP. Thank you, Reverend Daniels. I saw it. I'm jotting it down. Passion, purpose, preparedness, and people. That's awesome. So we're going to wrap with this last piece, and I'm asking you to do is to share. When we think about Kwanzaa principles and the Kwanzaa principle number 6, it's about creativity and leaving our communities in a better place than it was when we got there, more beautiful, whatever it is that we can contribute. So going forward, 2021, what do you think you will be doing? And then you get the last words. So you get to end it after you share what you will be doing in 2021. You get the last words. So you just go right ahead and then we'll end there.
2021 to me goes back to being prepared. I am learning.
Mm.
Leaders who don't learn are not effective leaders.
Ooh.
And I am a supportive leader and I am a leader of people and I am looking to do even more of that. And so I am learning. I'm constantly learning. And when I create a space where I can learn, I am more creative. Ideas just come out of nowhere. I don't have 5 degrees. I have not traveled the world. I'm a young girl born and raised in Hartford, Connecticut. And I don't have any plans. I don't have plans. I don't know what God wants to do to leave here anytime soon. So everything that I have learned from the village of people that were around me who poured into me at a young age. I was the assistant superintendent of Sunday school at 17. And so that creativity and learning prepares me to be a better leader, that I can make other leaders. And so my creativity doesn't stop with me. It just gets perpetuated as other leaders are developed because of my leading them, my coaching them, my mentoring them, my listening to them. Never ending process, creativity. It never ends. It gets sparked in different ways. But I am so passionate about teaching. I'm so passionate about helping people that I just have to think of new ways to get it done, especially virtually, especially when we can't, meet in a room and hug and touch and, readily go out to a restaurant and get things done. And so creatively, how do you engage and how do you learn? That's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be taking time out for me to develop me so that I can develop other people.
Ooh. With that said, we celebrate you, phenomenal woman, phenomenal entrepreneur, minister, mother and wife, phenomenal leader. We celebrate you. And thanks again for coming on. Reverend Daniels, I'm hoping that you come on again because there's so much in you to share. Thank you so much.
God bless you. Thank you so much, Dr. Alice, for this opportunity to share. This was great.
You're quite welcome. I enjoyed myself.
I enjoyed this immensely. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So until we see one another again. All right.
God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you again for joining us here at Around the World. I'm back with Dr. Alice Farrell. We just had the pleasure of meeting with Reverend Daniels, and what a delightful experience, because she brought in the faith community and all the work that is happening in the community, as well as youth and the engagement of youth. She gave us so many different tips and strategies that you can use across the different venues as we shared on the actual interview. So I want to make sure that you take the opportunity to go over and subscribe to the channel, Dr. Alice Farrell YouTube channel. Subscribe and get the other videos. Take a look at them and join us again. We have some very exciting interviews for you to observe, for you to watch, and for you to learn from. So until we meet again, do take good care. Remember to be safe and to stay well.